Behind every achievement, behind every moment people see, there's a story. The challenges, the lessons, the purpose, and of course, the impact. Welcome to Impact Play with Dr. J. Real stories, real conversations, real impact. Now, let's get into today's Impact Play. So today's guest is Lynn Tramonte, a strategist, communicator, advocate, and founder of the Ohio Immigrant Alliance. For nearly 3 decades, Lynn has used the power of communication and storytelling to amplify voices, build connections, and work alongside communities seeking change. She has written everything from hashtags to books, coached others to share their own stories, and dedicated her career to making sure people's experiences are part of the larger conversation. So today we're going to talk about, of course, leadership, advocacy, collaboration, and the power of storytelling and what it means to create impact by making sure we help others be heard. So Lynn, welcome to Impact Play.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So before we get into all that good stuff we were just talking about, the advocacy and the career, who is Lynn? Let us know.
Okay. I live in Cleveland Heights. I have 2 kids. One is in college. One is a rising junior. And I like to do yoga. I work too much. I have an awesome boyfriend. He's the owner of Hexagon Books on Lee Road in Cleveland Heights. Yeah. And I love what I do. And I work too much. And I need to find that work-life balance.
When you find it, do let me know. I'll be happy to subscribe and learn what you learn. Shout out to Cleveland Heights. I grew up in Cleveland Heights.
Nice.
Yep, Cleveland Heights, class of 2005. Go Tigers. And most definitely that resonates with me a lot. So if you could tell us what experiences shaped you into the person that you are today.
Yeah, I grew up in a place that's very different from Cleveland Heights. Rural Medina County, about 6,000 people in my town. Everybody was white. We had about 10 immigrants, and I was friends with all of them, and no Black people, like literally none, 0. Yeah. And my grandpa was the son of Italian immigrants, and Italian Americans often are very proud of being, of being descended of immigrants who didn't have education and came here and were discriminated against and then, found their way. But many Italian Americans are also pretty racist against Black people, And so I didn't understand how you could be proud of having overcome these struggles and then turn around and be racist against African Americans, right? It didn't make sense to me. So that's kind of what set me off in this career journey, was understanding this racism aspect. And, we weren't taught the true history of our country in schools. We were taught, all the things about white people coming to this country and, saving it, right, from, and that slavery was over, racism was over.
Yeah.
We weren't taught the truth about prisons and, we're taught about Jim Crow laws, but all that was over, and the police were here to protect us. And, we weren't taught what systemic racism was. Redlining was over. All these things were done in the past. And then really it wasn't until moving to Cleveland Heights that I started learning more about what the words systemic racism meant. And so what I do now in my work as an immigration advocate is I'm trying to not use those words that a lot of people don't really understand, but learn and explain concepts to people like me, like people who don't understand those terms, but can understand how they work and function in the world.
That's really good. Growing up in Cleveland Heights, there was such a diverse population of people, and critical conversations were had at such a young age, being a part of this community. I was very grateful for that. But then at the same time, there were other parts of my life, much like you, where I was just in one particular environment with one type of people, a group of persons. And it was very like a blinding view of the way the world actually is.
Yeah.
And funny, you kind of talk about not really being able to see someone else's plight and you've overcome the same. And so I think that's one of the things that I appreciated about my community. My best friend growing up, her name's Misty. She's Italian American. And yeah, yep. And her family, much like what you were kind of talking about, like her grandmother was like, oh my goodness, like her best friend is Black. Like, what's going on here? But being in, we had a lot of critical conversations. Even I was a young
Mm,
kid. She's asking questions. Her grandmother, a very older lady who immigrated here, asked a lot of critical questions of me. And
mm,
I was able to bridge understanding and not being immediately offended and
mm.
being able to have the conversation. I felt like there was love that was built there.
Wow.
But if I took immediate offense to everything or how she initially made me feel, that would have never happened. And so that's one of the things like I always encourage people. Then I went from Cleveland Heights to Ohio State, which was also a melting pot. My roommate was literally the opposite of me. She
Wow.
had never been around, anyone that looked like me. And so we had a lot of critical
My
conversations
gosh.
living
I'm
in that
sorry
environment.
you had to be that person for everybody, though. Like,
Correct. And there is a fatigue, right? And so there is a fatigue that comes with that. But I am very clear. I feel like God has given me authority to clear up miscommunications or maybe help relearn or reteach what people may know about what they think they know about people that may look like me. And we're not monolithic, right? But so yeah, so I appreciate that. Kind of you had your eyes open, right? Like being in a different environment. What did you think your career path would be? And is this in alignment with that?
I was going to be a rock star.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was going to be a marine biologist.
Hmm.
Because I didn't think, every society discourages you from pursuing English, right? English as a career. They say, you're never gonna find a job. But by the time I got to college, I was trying to pursue science and it was too hard. And I dropped out of that as my major. So I did just go into English. Turns out that everybody was wrong, and having a major like English was actually super marketable. I got a great job out of college. I was
Mm,
working for a consulting company and they literally put my resume through a keyword search and they wanted somebody who could write. That was a skill they wanted. And so I got an awesome job. I was working as a consultant for one of the big five consulting companies. And my client was the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which used to exist in 1998. And so working in the government on the inside and seeing, that there's only so much change you can make inside the government.
hmm.
And I didn't know you could get a job as an advocate in a
Mm,
nonprofit.
hmm.
I didn't know that existed. And so I was in DC, found out that that was a job and started working for a nonprofit that, I would go on Capitol Hill, talk to the staff members for Congress and encourage them to change the law. It's a dream job.
Right, right.
Because when you work for a member of Congress, you have to use their opinions. You have to, spout their opinions. But when you
Hmm.
work for a cause, you get to spout the opinions of the cause. So it was great. And
Yeah.
I've been in different roles in that type of job since 2000.
That's really, really cool. So, like,
Yeah.
give me, if you can think back, what first really showed you that words and stories had power in the positions that you were in?
Well, it's really working with members of Congress because,
Hmm.
they're just regular people. And if you talk to them about, Section 287G of the Immigration and Naturalization Act, it's just a law. But if you say, Karen was getting beaten up by her husband, and when she called the police, they came to her house. And instead of arresting him, they arrested her because she doesn't have legal immigration status. That sticks with them. And then they can repeat that and they go into a hearing and they
Hmm.
say, I'm opposed to this section of the law because I don't think Karen should be arrested when she calls the police.
Got you. So we made it personal, right? We invoked emotion for them to understand what's going on there. I have the awesome privilege to be a marketing professor at Cleveland State University.
Wow.
And that's one of the
Great.
biggest things. Yeah, one of the biggest things that when I speak with students, like marketing, I don't know what concept of marketing was in like the 1980s, but like this concept of storytelling
Yeah.
and invoking emotion and being authentic changes lives. And so when you say that, like, hey, instead of saying like the code says this and we would like to see this as the outcome, attaching a human, genuine through and through, that's powerful. That's powerful.
It's just how our memories work. I mean, I think it's something in the way our brains are, it's not like, I kind of don't like that there's this fad about storytelling and there's these careers and I'm a storyteller and I'm a, in the LinkedIn sense of
Yeah.
it, because
Yeah.
if you look at like old societies and all the indigenous cultures and everything, storytelling is just how they pass on history,
Yes.
even before written text existed, because it's how we can remember something. I can't remember the text of 287G, but I can remember a story because that's how our brains work.
Exactly. I was just having this conversation, oddly enough. My daughter runs track and she's learning a new concept. And I'm sitting here just going through the fundamentals of it. And like she's 9, right? And she's like, I don't know what you're saying. So I'm like, let me put this in a different circumstance. Like, mommy, when mommy did this, like, and I just made it like super human. It was like,
Mm,
I get
I
it
get
now,
it.
so like, like that, I think sometimes we make things a little bit more difficult than they need to be. But yeah, I wish that we looked at storytelling as something innate and
Mm,
natural versus this new LinkedIn skill, but it is.
yeah.
But, that's how we've gotten our oral histories. That's how, when you watch or read about our history in the past, that's how our country was formed, right? We
Yeah.
talked to each other. We listened to each other, made the necessary adjustments on how that actually made us feel.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think we need to
Yeah.
get back to that as a society if listening and talking and being in a safe space to do both for sure. So you started Ohio Immigrant Alliance after returning back to Ohio from DC, right? Take me through that season. What did that look like?
I'm scared to move back because, I mean, DC's a great place, there's something happening. There's 10 things happening every day, but I had a kid. He was 9 months old. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. He was sleeping in the living room and driving an hour and a half each way to take him to daycare and go to work. Anyway, so I'm so glad I moved back. I'm so glad I moved to Cleveland Heights. But as soon as I got back, there was a woman named Saida Mansour who was arrested by ICE and put in immigration jail, and she was nursing her baby at the time, and I had a 9-month-old baby. And, it just seemed so incredible that it was so important to put her in immigration jail and separate her from her baby. For what? Their immigration laws are civil for the most part. They weren't arresting her for committing a crime. They were arresting her for a paperwork violation. And I
Mm.
worked with this group in Painesville called OLA to try to get her out of jail and to try to stop her deportation. And it led to a policy change, very weak policy change that said nursing mothers can't be separated from their babies, but she was deported. So, from there, we just kept working on different cases and we ended up starting this as a project and then it became a nonprofit in about 2023.
Wow. That You literally took the words out of my mouth. I'm like, well, what experience made you say, hey, I need to pick this up? And they were like, look at the situation here. I wouldn't even call that little. I mean, at least there was a change
Yeah.
because you made noise
It does
about
not
it.
last. It hasn't lasted. That doesn't exist anymore. It's already been undone, right?
Right. Indeed. And so I think that's the cause for the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's continual. It's continual.
Mhm.
So what was the early days like building Ohio Immigrant Alliance?
Well, since we weren't a nonprofit, we did have support from the organization I worked for, America's Voice, but we didn't have our own budget. So
Hmm.
we just survived off of fumes. We didn't have staff or anything like that. During the first Trump administration, I left the organization that I was working for. And so I started doing consulting for some other groups, but this Ohio Immigrant Alliance was only survived off of grassroots funds. People donate like $5, $20. And most of the money we put right back out into the work. We would put money on people's immigrants' commissary accounts when they were detained in
Hmm.
the jail. And it
Yes.
was great because it was like really grassroots, and people loved to know that they were supporting people directly.
Yes.
We would put
Yes.
out these fundraisers and say, Maury doesn't have any money on his books. He's been here since he was 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Help us put $100 on Maury's account Friday. And people
Mm-hmm.
would just donate. Sometimes we limited it to $5 so that there was an equity and nobody felt like bad if they could only donate $5.
That's
And
good.
it really, people really felt like they were in it with the folks that were being detained. And the people who were detained really felt supported and
Yes.
ended up creating this like community of people who were on the inside and people on the outside working together.
Mm-hmm.
And the people on the inside were telling us what was going on. They were giving us information about abuses, guard violence, guards smuggling drugs into the jails, attempted suicides, escapes, because they were in the jail with people who were also being there for criminal reasons. They would tell us
Yes.
everything that was going on. We documented it. We filed civil rights complaints. We filed lawsuits. We did media work, and we ended up together ending 2 ICE contracts in county jails in Ohio. Yeah. With this amazing, like inside outside,
Mm-hmm.
coordinated strategy. And it felt really good because these guys were being told by the jailers, you have no power, you have no voice, you're an immigrant, nobody cares about you, you're going to be deported, nobody wants you. And
Mm-hmm.
yet they actually changed something, and many of them got released too, but they changed something so that for 4 years, hardly anybody was being detained in Ohio because they canceled those 2 ICE contracts.
My goodness. I'm sorry. Kudos like that. My whole
Yeah.
heart. Like my whole
Yeah.
heart. When you talk about grassroots, I gotta pin it there for a second because sometimes, and so again, my background is in nonprofit and I'm a consultant that goes into many organizations and their mind is on these like, oh, I have to have millions of dollars to get work done. No, you don't have to have millions of dollars to get work done. You need to invoke people that care about your mission. People understand exactly who and what
Yes.
and why you're serving. And little coin drop here for people. 80% of nonprofits, their funding comes from individual donations that
Wow.
are successful. Successful running nonprofits,
Really?
80 of their
Okay.
funding comes from individual donations. So that most people don't know that because what we hear are grants, right? And sponsorships and like large contracts. But if you have a robust individual giving platform for people that care and understand what you do, you are in a better circumstance than worrying about whether you get that one grant that everybody's competing for. So,
I'm so
yeah.
excited. Can I tell you why?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because so we've only been a nonprofit for 3 years, right?
Yes.
And I've been like the deputy to 2 other nonprofits. And at those 2 nonprofits, 90% of our funding was foundations. And
Hmm.
at this one, I was trying to mimic that model. And I was
Yes.
getting upset and worried because it's been flipping. We were 80 foundation and
Hmm.
20% grass. And it's been changing, and I've been watching it change, and I'm like freaking out, right?
No.
And I'm like, what is going on? And I'm telling our board, I had a board meeting last week. I'm like, you guys, we're like, our grassroots funding is off the chain.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm like, and they're like, you need to get more institutional funders. And I'm like, you know what? You are right. We do. And look at this. And I love it because we need to bank it so that we can
Hmm.
plan around it. We only have 1 full-time staff. Okay.
Okay.
So I want to be able to hire another full-time staffer, but it's so exciting that you're saying that to me, because to me,
Yes.
with the way foundations are working now, on immigration, people have been pulling back a little bit from funding and stuff like that. And so I had been just thinking in my head, I should really focus on making this work and banking it
Yes.
so I can hire
Yes.
another staff person. And so to hear you say that is making me very excited. So thank you
Good.
for telling me that. I didn't know that.
Yes. No, honestly,
Yeah.
I am a student of fundraising and my dissertation for my doctoral programs is on giving behavior, what makes
Mm,
people give. And so I love the social exchange theory. And so, I can be and can go on and on and on about this, but just understanding that when you're going after grants and those large institutional funds, that's highly competitive and they're very specific about who they want to fund. And that funding
Yeah.
can change on what's going on in popular culture. It could change what's going on with who's currently in administration. It can change. So priorities change. People motivation and why they give is not really going to change like on the wind like that, right? If that's something that they typically care about, they're going to continue to care about.
The other thing, let me ask you this. I don't know if this is okay to ask this on this
No,
forum,
you're
but
fine.
like the other thing is that when you're going after institutional funding, you spend a lot of time preparing the proposal. And sometimes you have to create new work or a new project to suit their foundation
Yes.
priorities.
Yes.
But for grassroots giving, it's to give to the work that you are doing or that you want to do.
Yes. You pinned it.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. So there's a actual old term. It's called mission creep. And so when people are going after grants and institutional funding, their mission starts to creep away from its original concept, or you're implementing programs just to find that pot of money or to entice them to give you money versus staying kind of genuine and true to what your mission is. And so that's for me as a consultant. I preach the healthy pie. So, making sure that your pie, you have your grants is a healthy portion and that your individual giving is its own healthy portion. Your major gifts, your sponsorships, your events, your, planned giving, right? If somebody, your bequeaths and things of that nature, so you have this healthy pie so that at no point in time, which I'm seeing a lot right now with a lot of clients is that, and this is a really good segue because I was going to ask you about like the challenges that you might have seen in growing your nonprofit. What I'm seeing, especially after the pandemic, is that there's a pooling of funds in certain places in terms of grants and things. And a lot of organizations were highly relying upon those funds. And so now they can't do as much. There's less impact, So
Yeah.
you've spoken to it. You're in a good spot. Don't worry.
The one thing I can say, though, is that we haven't seen a lot of support from Ohio-based institutions. We have gotten funding from national institutions and from the Ben and Jerry's Foundation.
Oh, nice.
And the community foundations in Ohio and the other institutions in Ohio, I've looked at their websites and I've tried to find ways we could fit in, and they're funding a lot of like local projects and like city-based improvements and services, but the advocacy part and the narrative part, and that's where I was, when we were talking earlier about like the support for nonprofits in Ohio, it's like Ohio is an important state politically. And I do think that for our country to get back in a place where, or get into a place where we're addressing human needs and not, billionaires' needs. Ohio has to change. Ohio has to be part of the change, right? Because it's a state that has a huge population of people who are working and not being able to pay their basic needs. And it has people in power who are kind of like the same people in power in DC right now. So I feel like our philanthropy needs to step up in terms of the narrative, funding advocacy, funding infrastructure too. And look what happened to Ohio Organizing Collaborative last week. Like,
yes.
The progressive side of Ohio has not been invested enough in, and that's just what I think.
Yeah, I think that, it's been such a sticky place in terms of how can people advocate safely. I think the nonprofits and foundations and maybe some funders are trying to figure out how do I do that safely and not incur any type of harm because we
Can't.
support. Right. So I think it's such an interesting landscape to be in. And I do feel like there's a number of people trying to figure that out. And I think that having the critical conversations as a community, like, are we serving our people? Let's just start there. Like going back to the storytelling, like this is what's happening. And I understand like our current climate may feel different right now, but how can we still serve people and hear each other out? It's been interesting for me. I hear a lot of things, like I said, going inside of organizations as a consultant, being able to hear, like, can we do that and keep our funding? Can we do that? And so, like,
Yeah.
having some of these critical conversations as a community, I agree, need to happen. One of the things when I was doing research on your organization, the word alliance really stood out to me. It really did. An alliance means people coming together. So this is just a perfect segue. Why was collaboration such an important part of the work that you wanted to create and utilizing even it in the
Mm-hmm.
name of what you're doing?
Wow. It was very unintentionally chosen. And this is kind of funny, but the acronym used to be OHIA. Uh, and I used to want people to pronounce it AHA, like they do in Southern Ohio.
That is so funny.
Nobody else would do it. Nobody would do it. So people kept telling me, stop it. Just stop it. It's OIA. No, but I think it was like one of those things where we chose it not really knowing, like in the back of our heads meaning it. But
Yeah.
it was not a lot. Like there's other groups where they are like, we are doing this to immigrants. Like we are Americans doing something to immigrants, and they are, like, and the strategy that we always did was like, we would sit down with the person who had the deportation case and their family, and we'd be like, what are we doing? It was always like a team kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it just always seemed like a team. And where you talked about like being able to do a lot with a little, like having a small budget and being able to do a lot and how it's nimble, we would pay, people would be paid for their time and participation. Like either we would help immigrants out by helping them get a pro bono lawyer, or we would raise money to pay their application fee for something. Or if they participated in an interview, we would give them like $150. We did a lot of research projects with immigrants, and we would pay them for participating in the research project, Yeah. So it was like, rather than paying, people's staff get paid to do these jobs. And then you're over here asking somebody to participate in this research project and talk about the worst thing that ever happened to them for 9 hours and take time off of work, and they're not getting paid. So
Right.
that was it. It was just a team. And like, what's really cool is that it was leadership development, right? Like the guys in the jail who were like reporting these civil rights abuses and documenting things, they are leaders. They came out of that with more experience. Now, some of them are still involved in our group. They do other things, like Abdullah Chow, who was highly involved in our Reunite US campaign and still is. And now he'll call me and send me evidence about something that's going on in Mauritania that we can use in our advocacy for TPS for Mauritania. I mean, Sarah Hamdi, who's on our team, she's an organizer for us. We got to know her through her mother's deportation campaign, and she's been involved in a lot of different campaigns we do, and now she's on our staff. So there's so much leadership in Ohio within the immigrant community. A lot of people came from other places. They were organizers in their community. They were a part of human rights campaigns, and then they fled here to seek asylum. Like, there's so much leadership, and like a lot of people don't recognize that because during the day they work at a warehouse or they, own a restaurant or something like that. They're not in an advocacy job, but
Yeah.
it's really, really cool that we're able to, it is an alliance, they're part of our team.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I mean, you're bringing people together. And that's the work that I see. Like, I do a lot of sleuth work before I talk to people, and I'm like, this is really cool. It really is an alliance, right? You're bringing people together. And to change gears just a smidge, a lot of people hear conversations about immigrants throughout the headlines and statistics. And your work really focuses on the people, that this is their lived experience. So how do you help bring humanity back into these difficult conversations?
We have a project that we would like to get funded that is about changing the images people see that accompany immigration stories. A lot of people focus on the words and the types of stories that are told. But if you think about it, when you look at a newspaper and you see an immigration story, the most common images you see are a police officer arresting somebody. You see somebody in handcuffs. maybe you see somebody at the Mexico-US border, like looking really sad, carrying all their stuff on their back. It's a lot of
Yes.
miserable imagery and law enforcement imagery. So it just reinforces overall that immigration is about law enforcement, border security, misery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it doesn't tell the immigration experience and it doesn't show people in a dynamic light. So
That's
we
good.
would like to
Yeah.
create a free to use image database of just the whole experience, people eating with their families, people going to work, even just random, imagery from whatever, like, because, there's a lot of copyrights about images and stuff like that. So that's one thing, is that we need to challenge the media to use more creative imagery rather than just reaching for the stock photo of
Yeah.
the bars of the detention center.
Right.
The other thing that we like to do is just say, like, strip out the regular activist language, like there
Mm.
was a woman who got attacked in a hate crime in Columbus, and she was originally from Somalia and she wears a hijab. So, a typical way an activist might talk about it would be like, Somali woman in hijab gets attacked outside of her apartment. So instead of that being the way we introduced it, I said, imagine you're sitting outside your apartment waiting for your kids to get off the bus
Mm-hmm.
and you get attacked by your neighbor. We've all been
Mm.
that mom waiting for our
Yeah.
kids to get off the bus and our neighbor comes over and punches us. They
Mm.
didn't like the way we were dressed. They didn't like our religion. They didn't think we belonged in this country and they
Right.
just attacked us, right? So you can
Right.
identify with
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Because
What
it's
else?
human.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like these ICE tactics of, pulling ICE is going out and the, federal immigration police are going out in unmarked cars, wearing masks, pulling, and this has happened a lot in Columbus, pulling people over on the street in cars. And if you don't pull over, they'll start following you in high-speed chases. And so when you say it like that, a lot of people say, well, why just pull over? Just pull over. Well, here's what the experience is as a woman. If somebody's chasing you and
Yes.
they don't have a police car,
You're not
you
identified,
you
right?
already you
Yeah.
already know where I'm going. But
Yeah.
for the men who are listening, right?
Yeah.
If you're being chased by somebody in a regular car and they've got cop lights inside their car and you don't know
Right.
who they are, you as a child, as a 16-year-old, your parents told you do not stop,
That's true.
right?
That's
We
true.
don't stop. We drive away.
That's true.
So maybe men don't realize that because they weren't taught that, but we were told not to stop.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to stop. Dr. Linda Davis was killed in Georgia in a high-speed chase that ICE initiated in a no chase zone
Mm.
because they wanted to get a guy. He had a deportation order. He was not accused of murder, guilty of murder, nothing like that. It's a civil violation and she's dead.
Mm.
So these are the things, like, we try to explain it to people in a
Yes.
way that they can enter it instead of just using the language of like, that it was an ICE agent. I wouldn't know it was an ICE agent.
Right. I mean, honestly, at this point, like, I'm really kind of detaching political affiliations and like, let's just talk about what's happening to human beings on American soil. Like, let's just talk about that. What do you wish people knew or understood about families and individuals that you're working alongside?
Yeah. So I think I had a lot of conversations with US Americans, and we assume the immigration system works logically and that there's a way you can apply for a visa and a green card. And if you're in danger in your country, you can apply from your country to come here, and that people
Mm-hmm.
just don't do it or that they lost their chance. And like, unfortunately, our system is so screwy that
Mm,
it just doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. And we have this weird policy where you cannot apply for asylum from your country. But if you risk your life and go all the way from Africa through South America, Central America, get to the US Mexico border and request asylum, we have to let you in. It's a law. It's legal for us to let you in. And then once you get here, you're allowed to apply for asylum legally. But we also have the right to put you in jail while you're applying for asylum.
wow.
It doesn't make
That's
any sense.
horrible.
So it's horrible. So why don't we not do that, and have a different set of laws that lets people apply for asylum, in their home country, but they also need to be
Yeah.
able to apply at the border. Like, they need options.
Mm.
And let's let people apply, apply for visas to work in a factory. There's no visa to work in a factory. Like, let's just have a system that makes more sense.
Really?
Yeah. There's no visa to work in a factory. There's no visa to work in a restaurant, hotel. Once you're here, if you marry a US citizen, it's half of the people, depending on how you came to the country, you might not be able to get a green card. You might have to be deported. Like, changing your status is really tricky.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's in itself something for listeners to understand. It is just not clear cut. It's not straightforward. And, there's a need to form it.
There is. And I know it sounds like, oh God, reform's going to be so hard and that kind of thing. There's a couple of things that we could do that would just make it a lot better, like a couple big, simple changes. One would be to take the immigration courts and make them independent from the executive branch. Right now, the immigration courts are not real courts. They are under the control of the Justice Department. So the attorney general can tell the judges how to rule, and she can fire them if she doesn't like what they do. So at a bare minimum, Congress could say the immigration courts are now going to be separate courts. That would be a big step forward.
Well, I mean, there's just so much. I mean, you're saying a lot to me that is I'm unaware of, right? And I fancy myself informed, right? And so like I think again, like when we're talking, to listeners, like where do we go to get this information? How do we listen better so that we how for me now I'm going to start listening differently. Like, looking at, okay, this is a story about immigration. Like what images am I seeing? Right.
Yeah.
As a marketing professor, I talk about media literacy a lot, right? And understanding like, is this propaganda? Is this factual? Where is it coming from? And so, just for me, you just gave me a point to check myself. Like, what does this look like? Is this human? Is this humanizing this situation? So I guess that's a good question for you. How has listening really changed you as a leader?
Well, when I first started working on immigration advocacy, I did have that attitude of like, the experts are the people who studied immigration policy and, who have the PhDs and the lawyers and the JDs and stuff like that, people who are paid the big bucks. And yeah, that's wrong. I mean, those are the people who know some stuff, right? But God, I mean, experts are the people who've been through it and they know so much and they can explain it so well. We have a research project called Behind Closed Doors, Black Migrants and the Hidden Injustices of the U.S. Immigration System, the 6-part research series. And the final project is, it's got the same name, the final paper, and it's got recommendations from immigrants and immigration lawyers about what to do with the system. And one of the recommendations is just like, make it simpler,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
that's such a profound recommendation.
Yes.
And it's just perfect. Make it simpler.
Just listening to some of the things that you're saying, I'm like, okay, how can we just simplify that? And why is it so complicated? And, like so many questions about a system that affects human beings. And so like, just for me, I always try to just listen in and like, where's this affecting our community? And understanding that they are a part of our community and understanding that your life may be impacted by the immigrants in your community and maybe opening your eyes to see that the work that they do in our community as well, and so like, I love how you framed the one circumstance about standing at the bus stop waiting and your neighbor, like they are your neighbor, you know what I'm saying? Like they're people. I'm like, stop, removing the human out of the situation is for me. So this is heavy work that you do. You're working with people in some of the most challenging moments of their lives. How do you carry those stories while continuing to do the work? Because I know when I worked with youth, it was so heavy. How do you do that?
Well, I did get a therapist. During the Trump administrations, I always need to have a therapist. And I mean, God, the people I work with, it's funny because the people who manage our hotline. So this time, this Trump administration, we did set up a hotline for people to call and email with questions to report abuses in the jail. Loved ones can call to advice and help. And it's been great. because people are calling it, people are emailing it. We put out a report about the first year of the hotline. So it's spreading some of the conversations around. We have two great hotline managers. And it's funny because I always tell them, I'm like, are you okay? Do you need to take a break? And it's like what other people tell me, like, Lynn, do you need to take a break or whatever? It's always easier to tell other people that.
Indeed.
I gotta tell you though, honestly, like every day I'm dealing with trauma. I'm hearing things that I don't really want to.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad. People in jail in Ohio, their bodies are being broken. They're getting sicker and sicker. People have had limbs amputated. People are having heart attacks. People are trying to kill themselves. They're depressed. They are wasting away in jail. They are getting complications from glaucoma because they're not, like, their eyes are swelling, their limbs are swelling from diabetes, it's not about the medicine only, it's about the quality of the food. You can't manage your diabetes with the food in the jail, and it's so disgusting to hear these jailers at these county commissioners meetings and the commissioners saying, well, it's not the Ritz-Carlton and, this money is great for the county and things like that, and know that these people are just wasting away in this jail. They don't need to be there. They're not hurting anybody. This is a civil violation, but nobody should be treated like that in a jail. A jail, I personally don't believe jails help people stop committing crimes. And I also don't think anybody should be treated like that in a jail. But if it's a civil violation, like, I think we can all agree that you don't need to be tortured over a civil violation, right? No matter what you think about jails.
Indeed.
So yeah, what I hear is very hard to deal with. And then what we all hear looking at social media from the injustices of Carmelo Anthony and then all the pedophiles and all these other guys who get 90 days. And then boys being shot in the back, or the one-year-old being killed by cops because, they said that his parents shoplifted diapers and all these things. Like, we're all hearing it.
Yes.
And even things my kids deal with, South Euclid, with police acting crazy whenever kids get together in a park or kids get together at a party, so, like, it's
There's
just
a larger
lot.
thing. It's a larger something at play in terms of society. I do believe that there's higher trauma levels than there's ever been. How do we get back to a place where we look at each other as human beings and really care about life? I don't know how else to say it, but like, we care about life. I'm glad that you talked about making sure that, like, people are checking in on you. This is another part for me, for those listening in that are interested in leadership, that heavy is the crown, right? Like, that when you step into these roles, you're stepping into repeat trauma incidents is just going to work, right? And continuing the work. But how do we I want to continue to have these conversations on bringing respect of life back, respect of our neighbor back, respect of the human experience. What did they say? The pursuit of happiness. Like those types of things of what we're supposed to stand for as a nation is heavy. And therapy help too. So I'm a proponent of Jesus and therapy. That's me. So, because otherwise you will burn out. And then if you burn out, who's carrying the mantelpiece, right? And so, like, to continue the work at hand. And so that's one of the biggest things when I'm speaking to my nonprofit leaders is, like, how do we avoid the burnout? How do we deal with the traumas that we see every day? Earlier on in my career, I did not do a good job. I did not do a good job with it. I remember calling my grandmother, who was a retired social worker, sobbing in the school parking lot. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, every day I'm seeing what's happening to our youth here in the city of Cleveland. I can't, like, I'm literally sobbing every day on my way home. And she gave me tactics. She was like, I need you to not hold it in. She's like, I need you to be able to separate your work from your personal, which was difficult, right? But when I understood that my God-given purpose was to be a bridge between confusion and understanding, to build systems, processes, and organizations. I can't do that stressed out. I have to have time away. I have to I do need to go speak to my therapist. I need to meditate and pray. Like, so I was able to kind of put those things into place because we're the people doing the work. We're the boots on the ground. And if we burn out, then what? So what helps you keep your hopefulness?
Well, I make sure we do things that are also positive and fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a coloring book that we just published with a high school student who drew the pictures.
Oh my
Do I
goodness.
have a copy handy? I do have a copy right here. It's called
Nice.
Ohio is My Second Country.
Yes, I was going to ask you about the second country.
Okay, yeah. And what he did was he interviewed his friends. He's from Burundi.
Okay.
But when he moved to Cincinnati, he became friends with people from all over the world, right? Because only in the United States or another country do you get to like become friends with people from all over the world. And it's what we're saying is that like this is the place they chose, right? Like we have no control over where we're born. And that's the thing I want people to understand who are concerned about immigration is like, you were born in Ohio. You did not deserve to be born in the United States. You were lucky. And, it's actually incredibly brave for people to leave their home country. And it's a hard decision because a lot of people don't want to leave their countries. But the thing we all have in common is that we live here now. And yeah, so, we're doing this coloring book. We created an activity guide, so you can download it on our website. And we will make copies of the coloring book available at a discount for teachers and librarians and things like that. We also have free coloring pages for people that can't afford to buy the book. And yeah, we just want to get it out there as widely as possible. So things like that. And then we just have the absolute best team, from our staff and consultants to the extended network of people that are involved in our work, our volunteers, the immigrants that are part of the organizing work. Yeah, we really love each other, and everybody's kind of on the same page about what the mission is. They love Ohio, I mean, and they ask themselves, why am I in Ohio? I don't know, but I love it. Everybody's like, people are nice. People are great, and they see that the United States has a problem, but they also actually believe that the United States can be better.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how I can keep positive when, but yeah, like you said, there's lots of tactics we need to keep employing to keep ourselves from falling into those dark places.
Indeed. So what advice would you give someone who sees problems in their community and wants to help, but really doesn't know where to start?
Yeah, that's a good question. What's really cool about Ohio is that there's a lot of local leadership. In a lot of communities, there are already people who have started groups to address issues. There are a lot of chapters of Indivisible. There are regional groups of immigrant advocates. Some people are protesting against immigration jails in the regions of Ohio. Some people have set up, other types of groups. Depending on what issue you're most interested in, there's different types of groups. And there's a lot of things you could do, whether you leave your house or not. You don't have to always go to a protest. That's not always what everybody wants to do. So I know that's kind of a generic thing, but if there's absolutely nothing where you are, you can start something. If you're not the kind of person who wants to start something, I guess my suggestion would be, if you're not finding something on Google specifically, go to Reddit. It seems to be a really cool place to get a little bit deeper into what's going on in communities. I would stay away from Nextdoor. Nextdoor is a cesspool of complaints.
That's really good. So what's next for you in Ohio Immigrant Alliance?
Yeah, this summer we're definitely going to be promoting the coloring book and trying to get teachers, librarians, administrators, et cetera, ready to use the coloring book in classrooms in the fall. My colleague, Demba Diach, is about to publish his book. It's a policy book and a personal book called From Welcome to Deportation, the story of West African immigrants who crossed the U.S.-Mexico border. And he's he's kind of a navigator. I think that's the term people use now, but he's a fixer, problem solver. He's Mauritanian and Senegalese, a U.S. citizen now, but he's the guy that people come to when they first arrive in Columbus and they're like, what do I do? And he helps them kind of get acclimated. He teaches them English. He teaches them about the cultural and systemic laws in the United States and helps them figure out how to get their immigration cases moving. So his book is about why people leave West Africa, how they get here, which we actually have some scenes in the coloring book.
In the
It's called
coloring book.
the Bottom Route. It's a very dangerous journey, and people go through a lot of, many people die along the route.
My goodness.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
when they get here, it's like I was telling you before, you're allowed to seek asylum. So when they get to the border, if they pass a credible fear interview, meaning they have a credible fear of being harmed in their country, they're allowed to come in and seek asylum. And then there's this dance with the US government. It's like a gauntlet to see if you can survive all the different tests
Right.
just to get to the court system. So anyway, it's a policy book, like I said, but it's also based on his personal experiences, his family members, people he knows. So he'll be doing a tour with that. And
Very cool.
we've got some more art projects coming up in the fall.
Oh my goodness. So how can people learn more, support, and get involved?
Yep. Okay. OhioImmigrant.org is our main site. So that's learn more, get involved, donate. We have a detained immigrants commissary fund. So if you want to make sure your money goes directly to immigrants who are detained, we put money on their books all the time. We're constantly putting money on people's books. They call us, and we have a limit. Every 2 weeks, we'll top up their commissary accounts. And so you can either donate directly to that, or you can donate to us generally. And we also have a resource website for the community. It's called ohioishome.org. And that's a website if you want to know about your rights as an immigrant, as a protester, as an observer of ICE, as a school, business, service provider, that kind of stuff. And both sites also list the Ohio Immigrant Hotline. So if you have any questions about immigration, if you need a speaker, if you need a lawyer, the hotline is a one-stop shop for anything you need to know about immigration in Ohio. And you can find the phone number and email address on both of those sites.
Awesome. Well, at Impact Play, we believe that the biggest plays don't always happen in front of the crowds, but sometimes they really happen in those everyday moments where you can change a life, you can create an opportunity, you can amplify someone else's voice or help someone feel seen. So on Impact Play, I ask every guest, what has been your greatest impact play?
Canceling those 2 ICE contracts. In a conservative state, during and after a Trump administration, and doing it with the people who are inside. They did that,
Yep.
That's been the biggest impact play. I'm so proud of them.
I can't even, like, when you said that, I was like, woo, that is that is everything. Well, Lynn, I just want to thank you for joining Impact Play and for sharing not what you do just for work, but the purpose behind it. Again, before we go, where can people connect with you and learn more about the Ohio Immigrant Alliance and Second Country?
Okay. Thank you. Our website is ohioimmigrant.org. And if you want to get directly to the coloring book, you go to ohioimmigrant.org/second-country. Also, if you just Google Ohio is my second country, you'll find it. It's on bookshop.org. It's on those other sites that we don't go to. And if you go to our website, you can link it. You can buy it directly from us, and that's the cheapest way. You can also email hotline@ohioimmigrant.org for bulk orders, and then it's even cheaper from us. So we just need to talk to you about how many you want, where you want it shipped, things like that. And that's the absolute cheapest way to buy the book.
Oh my goodness. Well, to everyone watching and listening, thank you again for joining this episode of Impact Pay with Dr. J. If this conversation introduced you to something new, a new perspective, inspired you, or made you think of someone who needs to hear it, please share it with them. Make sure to subscribe, like, and stay connected as we continue highlighting the real stories, the real people with real impact. Follow Impact Play on Instagram at Impact Play Dr. J. Also connect with me personally on Instagram at Francesca Jones. And until next time, please continue to create impact.